Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and I have another vibrant butterflied alcohol ink card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to create my background for the butterflies. This is going to be my panels, and I like to use these lacy layers dies by Waffle Flower. I just think that they're just really pretty, and they give you a little something to the negative space that I wanted to have on this design. So they're kind of my go-to when I'm creating kind of like a background that I want subtle, but with texture or interest. So I did cut out the largest scalloped die and then the next smallest stitched die so that they layer nicely on top of one another. And then I'm also going to run the smaller stitched die back through my die cutting machine with the Botanical 3D folder by Tim Holtz. This is just, again, to add more texture in the background. Everything in the background is going to be white. The only color on this card, as you saw from that starting picture, is the butterflies that are alcohol inked. Everything else is white on white because it kind of gives you that really pretty texture without pulling colors and pulling the focus. So I did run this through my switch. I did mist the cardstock with a little bit of water just because that helps it to not crack. And then I'm going to set that aside. So here I'm cutting out the Tim Holtz Brushstroke butterflies, and I have them hanging off the Yupo because the highlight pieces and the butterfly pieces are all in the same piece. You can kind of see that here as I flip them over. And I don't want my highlights to be Yupo paper, and I'm kind of like, I'm running low on Yupo, so I'm kind of trying to be, strategic in how I'm cutting it so I can use it for something else later. But I didn't want to cut the whole butterfly out with it, so I just cut the actual body of the butterfly that I'm going to use alcohol ink in the Yupo. And then I'm going to bring in this really pretty white glitter cardstock to do the actual highlights of the butterflies, because I thought that would look, again, really pretty on top of the Yupo pieces. And I did have to use my craft pick just to kind of get these out of the dies. I do find that the dies like to hold on to the Yupo. I do sometimes struggle to cut the Yupo because it's plastic, but that's why I ended up getting that chrome base plate that you can see. You see it's like the mirrory piece on the camera right now. I've found that was really great for cutting pieces that are detailed, and or stuff that doesn't cut as nicely as you'd like it to. So the Yupo I found works great with the chrome base plate. And this white glitter cardstock I'm using here as well. Sometimes it gets funny about cutting. So I did find that thankfully using the chrome base plate was really successful with cutting this. And you can kind of see me trying to pop the dies back out so I can get those highlight pieces out. And then I put them in pinch bowls so that I knew which highlight piece went with which butterfly, because all of them have different highlight pieces that kind of run across them. The packaging is really helpful for this if you struggle to layer them up to figure out where the highlights need to go on the bodies. I use the packaging if I'm struggling a little bit because some of these pieces are interestingly shaped and it does take a second to kind of figure out where the heck they're supposed to go. And I did have to kind of be a little careful here. I didn't want to rip the glittery pieces out of this cardstock. So I used the body from the glitter and then all of the highlight pieces, and then I saved the actual body of the butterfly, like the base part of it, in this glitter cardstock for another project sometime later. I think that it would be really pretty in a different project. And then I'm going to work on my butterfly body. So as I said, this is all cut out of Yupo, and then I'm going to use two colors. I have GumBall and Laguna, and they're in the bigger bottle of alcohol ink. So you can see here I used maybe 1 or 2 drops of each color, because these are super vibrant. These came out later. I think this is when Tim Holtz recognized that a lot of people were using these inks to do these big washes of color on things. So he brought out bigger bottles with more vibrant colors. And I, at the time, was working for a design team who actually wanted me to use these on a project. So that's why I have the huge bottles. Generally, I don't buy the big bottles just because I don't need to go through my alcohol ink that quickly. But these happen to be in my stash because, as I said, I worked in a design team and I worked with these colors. So I own them, so of course I want to use them. And I thought that the super vibrant colors would be just really stunning on this everything else is white card, right? I mean, the sentiment is black because it's a sentiment strip. So you have just the thank you that's black, but everything else is white except these butterflies. So I really wanted to have vibrant butterflies to kind of use the white highlights over top to really give an interesting look. So that's kind of what I ended up doing, and that's why I chose these colors. You could do this with any color of alcohol ink. These are just the large ones that I own that are the most vibrant in color, but really, I mean, any of the alcohol inks would look stunning with this. And then you see I did lay out my highlight pieces along the butterfly so that I knew where everything went, and then I pick it up just to make sure I've actually lined it up properly. I choose to use my reverse tweezers for this. I just find it easier when I'm using delicate pieces with glue, just because I find it easier to hold, because you guys know I have longer nails, so sometimes they get in the way when I'm trying to do things with them, but this is just the easiest way I've found. So then I just use the reverse tweezers to lay it down, and then I line it up, make sure it looks like it's in the right spot, and then I just move on to whatever the next piece is. So I think that these turned out really pretty. I'd love to know what you guys think. Alcohol inks are just so much fun to play with. You kind of do have to be willing to let them do whatever they want to do, unless, I mean, I've seen people bring in like paintbrushes and do really detailed work with alcohol inks. That's not generally how I like to use them personally. I kind of get impatient, so I don't tend to use them that way, but you absolutely can. I've seen people do it. I've seen people create stunning flowers with alcohol inks and all sorts of stunning things. It's just, this is the way I choose to use them, so this is kind of the way I like to show it. And then you saw that I created the 3 butterflies, one with GumBall, one with Laguna, and then I mixed the 2 together on the largest butterfly. I just wanted some variation with the 2 colors. I thought that would be really pretty. And then, of course, the white highlight pieces that are in that glitter cardstock break up the color so they're even easier to tell what it is. Otherwise, it's a pretty big blob of color, which can be a little distracting to the eye. And then I did set my Misty on top of this just because the paper had curled a little bit. So to make sure that it was completely flat, I set my Misty on top of it while it glued down just to make sure that it was flat as it glued. And then I kind of laid out my butterflies in just like a triangle pattern. You guys know, if you've been with me for a while, that I like to work in uneven numbers. I find that that's more pleasing to the eye. Your eye isn't trying to make patterns because there aren't even numbers. So it just ends up being a little more attractive to the eye. There's nothing right or wrong with it. This is just my preference. So I do tend towards that. And then, of course, I only glued the bodies because I wanted some movement in the wings. And if you see me poking my finger up at the top of the screen there, it's just because my iPad sits in front of me and I like to watch YouTube videos while I create. So I'm watching somebody doing something, and it was just like the ad came up. So I was just pushing the button there so that it would keep going. But I do like to create some movement in my butterflies, so I do like to lift the wings so that they can kind of, not that they move necessarily because it is adhered down, right? So they're not like flapping all over the place, but that just gives them that chance to look like they're moving, and it kind of just adds another really cool effect. And then I did choose to all have them popping out of the panel as well. Again, that's just something that I like to do. I think that it creates a really pretty look when stuff hangs out of a panel because it's almost like it's not segregated into that one space, and I think that looks really neat. And then I did bring in a sentiment strip. You could stamp a sentiment if you wanted to. I like the sentiment strips. I have them, so I've been kind of trying to use them. And I did choose to make this a thank you card. It could be anything though, a birthday card, a thinking of you card, whatever you need to make it. I chose thank you because thank you and birthday are the ones I need the most. And currently I have quite a few birthday cards, so I've been kind of leaning towards making some thank you cards, but any sentiment on here would look stunning. And I just chose to have a really thin little sentiment to add to the card. It did take me a minute to figure out where I wanted to put it. Normally I would kind of try to tuck it under a wing, but in the end I chose not to do that. I also did leave these little dots that were in the design on it, and I chose to take those off as well because I just felt like they didn't really go with what I was kind of trying to create. And you can see that I'm kind of trying to figure out where I want to put it, where would I tuck it, where would I, and I couldn't find a place I liked to tuck it. So I end up just letting it be on its own. It's just there. And I think in the end, it ended up looking better that way. You can see that I kind of just decided that it was going to sit between the butterflies, kind of to the middle part of the larger butterfly. And I did bring out my Dries thin foam strips, or my Dries, I think they're thin foam strips. They don't make these anymore, sadly, so I'll have a different foam strip listed linked down below, but I still have a few of these in my stash, thankfully, because they are my favorite, but Dries stopped making them. So there are other companies who've made them. I haven't had to purchase any yet, so I think Waffle Flower makes some really nice ones as well. But I will link and list some down below if you're curious at all. And then because I cannot leave anything alone when it comes to adding glittery things, I brought in some Arctic Breeze pearls. They're just a really pretty white pearl, and kind of spread them around the design, again in an uneven number, just because I love white on white and I had to add as much white on white as I could. And then I'm going to hold it up here so you guys can check it out in all of its glory. I'd love to know what you think of this card. Hopefully you guys aren't tired of alcohol inked butterfly cards yet, just because they're just fun to make. Like they end up pretty, and they don't take a lot of work from you. Like they're, like it didn't take me very long to create those backgrounds, and then I just put some glitter cardstock on top. So hopefully you guys will give this card a go if you enjoyed how pretty it turned out. I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.